So today I'll be talking about the power of having a speak up culture, having environments where employees' voice is welcome, and it's really good for business.
Wow.
What? Okay, red light means we're on. And we're live. We're live. We're live. We're here. We're here. We're live. Live from our basements. Hello, LinkedIn universe. So good to have so many of you here. Hello, everyone. Steven Shadletsky here. Delighted to be with you again. We're here. Hi. We are live. Hello, everyone. For those I have not yet met, I'm Steven Shadletsky. Feel free to call me Shed, as this wonderful human being to my right, maybe your left, I don't know, but we're digitally, virtually shoulder to shoulder, and that makes my heart happy. This is Kristen Hadeed. You and I have known each other for a decade?
We're old.
No.
I think it might be more than that.
Sure. It has been a while. And we are in good company. Tina is here. Dr. Thomas is here. Feel free to hop in and say hello. Hello, Melissa from Montreal. Great to see everyone joining us. And Kristen Hadeed. Kristen is a longtime friend. We care greatly and deeply about the same vision of the world, one in which people say wholeheartedly and genuinely, I love my job, I love why I do it, and I love who I do it with. Even if it's hard, even if it's messy. She wrote a book called Permission to Screw Up, Leadership, Life, Career, Business. It's messy. And Kristen knows that more than most because not the first company, it was probably the second company you founded. Did you start Groove Shark before Student Made?
Made Suite.
Made Suite?
Second company. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyway, yada, yada, yada. She comes from a rich history of scrubbing toilets and employing other students to scrub said toilets. She's written the book Permission to Screw Up, which is brilliant. She's a speaker. She's a coach. You run an amazing program called the Human Leadership Program, which we'll speak more about and hook some people up with some free tickets to that amazing experience. Ale from my team and his partner just did that experience as well. So enough of the preamble. We're here. You're here. You're joining us from Michigan. I am here in Toronto, and please, everyone, hop in and say hello and let us know where you're joining us from.
Hello.
So, what's kicking?
What's kicking? Goodness. What's kicking is, I think this time of year is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're in the middle of trying to finish all the things that you want to accomplish before the end of the year, and also like setting a vision for the year ahead. And I always find, I don't know if you find this, but at the end of the year, it's like I live in these two places, like trying to finish the end of the year and dreaming for the year ahead. So that's been my week. I've been in a lot of strategy meetings talking about next year, and that's kind of where my head and my heart are.
Amazing. And your team is joining you in Michigan for a 5-day hangout retreat relationship thingy coming up here, which is awesome. Yeah.
Tomorrow. Yeah. So we're an all remote team. We've been remote far before the pandemic. And something we really acknowledge is that we need that time to be together, obviously, to connect. And what we used to do is we would have these retreats and they would be packed with work. And we would take time to get together and we would just have these packed agendas with strategy conversations. And then it's like we were together, but all of that could have happened in a Zoom meeting, And so now we actually do the opposite. So when we come together, we try not to work so that it's just truly spending time together and, developing our relationships.
Nice. As our dear friend Peter Doctor says, relationship is the foundation of accomplishment. So there is time and place for certain conversations and certain work, but, especially when you're a remote team, and so many people, over these last 3 years weren't remote. And then all of a sudden, boom, Monday, we're all remote. Let's figure it out. And for many, it's stayed that way for, coming on 3 years now. Yeah. And so to get used to the meaningful design of moments of in-person, virtual, what should be async, what should be sync.
Yeah.
There's a real art and intent to it.
You know what else is on my mind? This is going to take us in a totally different direction. But I
That's all
love
right.
this is our relationship. So hi everyone. You're get ready for a conversation that's going to go in all these different directions. What else is on my mind is the state of the world.
Mm.
And our world at work, and just how I want it to be better.
Yeah. Yep. Well, let's go there, because I think, we care deeply about leadership, the responsibility of what it means to be a leader,
Yep.
which is really around the human beings who choose to show up and work with us, and who we wish to serve. And so, I mean, one of the things that I think we're both sort of fascinated with is leaders generally suck, and yet I don't think they want to. And like you like we can call this, because you write about it. You were
Like,
a leader who
that's
you were a
me.
leader who sucked,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like,
Okay.
right? You landed a big contract. It was a huge like apartment complex in Gainesville, University of Florida. You went in to clean it, and what, like 45 people, nearly your entire staff, quit on you on day one because you thought leadership was wearing jeans and being in the air conditioned, you know, whatever the right term is, area, eating your Caesar salad while everyone was doing dirty work. That's what it means to be a boss and in charge.
Right.
And everything we're seeing with Great Resignation, quiet quitting, is that behavior of leader as boss or driver, as opposed to leader as behavior, which is leaders serve, leaders exude empathy, leaders are decisive, they own their impact, they give credit when things go right and take responsibility when things go wrong. Like, there's a, I'm writing in my book right now a trifecta of chapters.
Mhm.
I view them as kind of like, the Beatles album with like, uh, Mean Mr. Mustard, Polythene Pam,
Mhm.
like 3 songs that like blend into one. And the chapters are leadership defined. That I don't think we have enough of a standard definition of what it means to lead,
Yeah.
societally, as well as within our organizations, of which there's room for that definition to be nuanced. I think we should define it by behavior,
Yep.
not by P&L title. If you're a male, if you're white, like it should be behaviors. Then we need to select against that definition, and then we need to support people who are in those roles or who wish to be in those roles.
Yeah.
What do you think? Talk to us about this. Like, you
Okay.
are in this work of training and developing leaders to be better, as I am as well. What are we getting wrong
Yeah.
at our companies, in society, and what can we do to improve it?
Yeah. So I think where we're sitting right now in the world is a really interesting place, right? We know, like you said, the Great Resignation, we had the pandemic, quiet quitting, which with quiet quitting, I think there's something deeper there. The quiet quitting is this idea that, okay, I'm not going to go above the requirements of my job. I'm going to give the requirement, make my paycheck, and that's it. And I have to question, like, when did it become that the standard is to go over 100%? Like, is that human?
Yeah.
And I think there's also this piece of, I don't want to give more of my energy and more of my time and more of, my life to an organization that isn't giving me that back. That, I'm helping this organization grow. How is the organization helping me grow? And I have to say, rightfully so. Like, and I think about times in my own journey where I haven't felt that I was prioritizing my own needs and what mattered to me. And I'm sure we'll get into all that. And I think I can recall times where I quiet quit my own company. And, so I think that's a human response to, there's something deeper here. I don't know if you've heard of the latest career cushioning, which is, now I'm
There's
going to
another term.
line up option B, actively interview, actively line up an option B so that I can make a jump if I need to.
Mhm.
So you have that. And then you add in social and political change and unrest. You add in this looming potential recession. You add in generational gaps. And, I think it's like in 2025, millennials and Gen Z are 64% of our workforce, and are we really developing those leaders? I think there's like a question of succession planning. Has that really been thought through, and attracting and retaining people, so it's like all this. And I think I saw maybe it was Collins. I could be making this up. Collins Dictionary. The word of the year is
Yeah,
permio.
it's Webster, Merriam-Webster. Yeah.
It's like permio crisis, living in this constant
Oh,
state
that
of.
was Collins.
Okay.
Merriam-Webster is gaslighting, and Collins
Okay.
is perma crisis or something. This permanent state of crisis.
State of crisis, which
Yeah.
explains, I think, what we've been through in the last few years, right? So I think in order to have a conversation about leadership, we have to acknowledge the context and the environment that we're like talking about. And I think that there's another angle of this that's not being talked about maybe enough, which is leadership burnout and complete compassion fatigue and a lack of empathy, not intentionally, just because we've been through so much that it's almost like we're tapped out. And I think that I have really, you asked, like, what does it mean to be a leader? How do we define that? And I used to always define leadership by servant leadership. Like the more that I read and learned, that was a leader that I wanted to be.
Yep.
But I took it way too far. And I took it to mean that I come last always, and I prioritize what everyone else needs first. And it got to a point where I wasn't considering my own happiness, my own boundaries, my own needs, my own spark, what would light me up. And it got to the point where I became resentful of my work. I became the leader that was creating an environment that I don't think people were really thriving in. And that, really came to a head in the pandemic when we transitioned our company, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So It's like there's a mix of, I think, leaders who maybe haven't been given the training, the skills, like we don't, maybe aren't really clear on what leadership is and the gap between where they are and where they want to be. And then I think there's leaders who are amazing leaders and they're just like totally burned out.
Yeah. Yep. So please keep comments and questions coming. It's great to see an amazing active chat here. A few things. So our friend Simon Sinek wrote the book Leaders Eat Last, and I'm a believer. I think servant leadership and leadership are one and the same. Another mutual friend of ours is Rich Davini. Rich wrote the book The Attributes. Rich is huge on optimal performance rather than peak performance, right? To expect people to be peaking all of the time is a one-way road to burnout. We can't peak all the time. The thing that happens after a peak is a fall, like it's an apex. And so Rich talks about optimal performance, which means we give all that we can, whatever our best is. We give what the best that we can, whatever our version of best is in that moment. Sometimes it's peak and sometimes it is gritting it out and it's ugly, but we're giving the best that we can. The other thing that Rich has taught me is this notion of leaders eating last, which comes from, I believe, the US Marines, doesn't always happen. Because if you're out in theater and you're the most senior person, right, and you pause and you stop and you eat, it actually doesn't make sense for the most senior leader to eat last because they have to sit down and figure out what the frick they're going to do next. And so they go, sir or ma'am, you eat first, get your stuff, and then go figure out where we're going, which means I think part of a optimally performing, sustainably performing team is both the leader and the team. It's dynamic. And so, I think, your vulnerability and openness, and you have such an amazing, strong team that you can say, guys, I'm tapping out, or your team can say, Kristen, like you aren't at your best. Slow down. Stop giving us so much. Like it's balance. So, yeah.
Do you hear that knocking?
Yeah, someone's at the door. Should they join us?
He made eye contact with me as he's walking. I'm like, this is not the time. I love those neighborhoods where like everyone is so friendly. They just like knock on your door.
And now it's neighbor Al. Al, what do you have to say about the state of the world? Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
I think, so I think the spirit of servant leadership, the spirit of this idea of leaders eating last, like that is, we must take care of other people. Should I go tell him that?
Yeah, sure.
We must take care of other people.
I can say one other thing as you go do that if you need. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is wonderful. This is the first time someone's door is being knocked at as they're making eye contact with the guest. The other thing that came to mind as Kristen was speaking is I think it is fine to expect, Kristen, that every now and then we can give over 100%. Every now and then, I think, but to expect it, and that giving of more than 100%, even if I don't think that's a thing, but just the notion of it, um, needs to be earned. Like
Yes.
our relationship with a leader or an employee or employer or manager, whatever, is a relationship. And a
Yes.
relationship is defined as having at least two parties. And those parties, like that, a toxic relationship is one in which the more you invest, the worse it gets. And the only person who's responsible for that result is you, right? A healthy relationship is one in which you're in a relationship. You're both leaning in 100%. It is a shared, healthy, maintained. Both or all parties take responsibility for the health and well-being of that relationship. And so I think if trust, love, and loyalty is earned, it is fine to give of more than 100% for a time. And then we say, time for you to stop working and give 60% for the next 2 weeks or 0% for the next 3 days.
Yeah.
It's balance.
And that's what it means to be human, right? Like we can't be
Mhm.
100%. And also there's other areas of our life that require our energy and our time. And I mean, there's times I think where I'm a 100% friend, and then there's times where I'm a 60% friend. And like, same thing as a wife, as a parent, could go down the list. So I think, yeah. And just a practical example of that. So on our team, we have this goal of being a calm company.
Mm.
And we got this from the book It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work. A great book that I think explores just this idea of like how to really combat a culture of burnout. And we definitely have sprints. We have our human leadership program is a great example. There's a lot that goes into producing that. And, there can definitely be days where we are pushing the gas a lot more than we might normally. And what we do is we make sure that when we have a sprint like that, we're taking that time for self-care. So we give everyone a self-care budget. We make that week as easy as possible so that people can order meals and not have to be worrying about going grocery shopping and cooking in addition to all of this. We have a day where it's a self-care day to re-energize. And then we also do something, this is probably within the last maybe year and a half, called Break Week.
Mm.
And every quarter we close our company for 1 week. We don't serve customers and we are all off. And what that does is it creates this like mute, like we're all taking a break at the same time. So there's not that feeling of, oh no, someone's waiting on me for something. You feel like
Internally, yeah.
Yeah. And we time it at the end of the quarter because it's always busy at the end of the quarter. And then it's like we get to recharge and then come back for the next quarter. And we take a couple of extra weeks over the holiday. And when I share this with people, they're like, what? It's a total of 6 weeks. We could never do that. And I get it. Here's the thing. We had a paid time off policy and no one was using it.
Yeah.
And so this was my way of like accountability. If we're saying that time off matters, that work-life harmony matters, well, this is how we're going to hold ourselves accountable to that. And maybe it doesn't look like a break week for your team or your organization, but could it be a break afternoon? Or could you schedule a 2-hour meeting? And when people come, it's surprise, there's no meeting. You now have 2 hours to do something for you.
Yeah. And force them to do it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, I love that. There's the fallacy that unlimited time off, people in those organizations take less time off.
Yes.
And there's this whole talk of like 4-day work week. And it's like, well, maybe, but if you're doing a 4-day work week and those 4 days are intense and not balanced and unstable, and then let's just be honest, on that 5th day, you're just catching up on all the stuff that you missed. That is not a 4-day work week. So I love this notion of a break week and even putting it on your emails, like, please note, every single person in our company is off. So unless there's a leadership emergency, like we ain't responding. And that boundary, that healthy boundary.
Right. And there may be some organizations where you really do have to have somebody on. And so could you shift it? Could it be this group is on break and then this group is on, I think there's a way. And I think
alternate. Yeah.
I think what this is about is we say we care. Oh yeah, we care about this. Do our actions actually show it? And I think that's what is being asked.
And do our people feel it?
Do they feel it? Because that's what, like, if that was the case, if they felt it and our actions showed it, would we really be seeing the results that we're seeing right now when we look at quiet quitting and disengagement? And I don't think so.
Yeah. It's also so interesting. You and I do a lot of work with organizations where we we go and, let's be honest, sometimes for 60 minutes at a time. And we show up and we deliver a message. Oftentimes we go in and we develop a relationship and it's long term, but sometimes, I pop in as you do when we have a 60-minute relationship with a client. We
Yeah.
hope to serve them and then we leave. And one of the things I find really interesting is oftentimes we speak with senior leaders or an event organizer and we get one perspective of the condition of the organization. And there have been experiences where I've met senior leaders and I'm like, wow, what a great leader. And they're lovely. And then I go show up and I work with their organization, their team, and I'm like, what? Like, hold up. I even had an experience where I had a pre-client meeting. The pre-client meeting was awesome. Like,
Mhm.
got along with the very senior leader. We listened to the same podcasts. Like, I liked them.
Yeah.
And then they spoke before me, did a Q&A right before it was my turn to speak. And I think the second question that was asked was anonymous. It was an all hands manager meeting. So about, I think, 1,500 managers across a 20,000 person company. And the second question that was asked, anonymous, was what is being done to address uh, manager burnout and overload and overwork with managers and all employees. And this senior leader said, well, we did this, and this initiative 6 months ago, and I think it's done. And I'm like, no, no, no. I'm
Yeah.
like, not a good response. Not a good response.
Yeah.
And no matter how many of the great podcasts you listen to, that's the moment where you go, oh, it saddens me that this question needs to be asked because we did this, and this initiative. But the mere fact that you still have to ask this question means that there's more work that we need to do. And my hope is that by the next time we gather, you do not need to ask this question, and there's more work that we need to do here. It pains me. I'm upset about it, but it is the reality, and it's my responsibility to work with and for you to make it better. Like, that's the response I wanted to hear.
Yeah. And I think it's also, it's like culture and all these things we're talking about. It's not, these aren't boxes that you check. They are ongoing things that we must work through and on together. And it's, you may have a period where, oh, all right, like we've really mastered this work-life harmony thing and it's great. And then 3 seasons later, you're going through another growth spurt. And now there's different challenges that are popping up in that space. And it may be that your relationships are really strong and you feel really connected. And then there's something that happens that now we feel a little bit detached and disconnected. And so I try to really help people see that this isn't a box that we're here to check. This is a conversation. And I think no matter the team, and I'm curious if you agree with this, I think it all boils down to one thing. There's a gap between what like one perspective sees and wants and what the other maybe thinks that group wants.
Yeah.
And it's bridging that gap and creating the space for that conversation to happen. And I think
Mm-hmm.
so many times, because we're busy, because we're over capacity, we try to find the quickest solution to something, to just say, okay, we're working on this. And we don't invite the people to the table who actually are going to be impacted by that decision and that, plan of action.
Yeah.
And we wonder why it doesn't work. And it's because we didn't go about it in the most intentional way.
Yeah. There are some things I'm good at, and one of them that I'm not yet good at is mind reading. And so I call it making the implicit explicit.
Yeah.
And then, there's yeah, there's the case. I know we're both friends with Bob Chapman and Barry Waymiller, great company. They tell a story of they're having an issue at one of their factories. They hired SAP, which I believe stands for Squeeze All Profits. Sorry for anyone who works for SAP. To solve the issue, they spent $1 million, got no further. Management went to the frontline workers at the factory floor level and said, hey, like, we've tried everything, we're having this issue, any ideas? And they're like, oh yeah. They went to like the local Business Depot, got 3 different colored folders, set up a system, $47 solved. Right? Total cost, total budget for the plan, $1,047. Right? And so if we just invite the people who are closest to the issue, who are impacted by the decisions, we're more likely to make better grounded. And it takes more work, and
Yeah.
it invites, and it may make us look like an idiot as a leader that we didn't think about what they experience every day. But like, duh, of course not. Like, yeah.
So something we do on our team, what I think like the practical piece of this is how do you bring this conversation to the forefront? How do you
Mm-hmm.
create a space where people can freely and openly talk about what isn't working and really share their ideas of how to make it better? And I think that takes time and psychological safety and all the things I know that you and I are really passionate about. So what we do on our team is we call it a quarterly review, and this happens every quarter. And we ask everyone to come with an evaluation of our culture. And for us, we look at 5 different areas. We look at our relationships, our trust, our communication, our collaboration, and our personal happiness at work. And we ask each person to rate all 5 of these categories on a scale of 1 to 10 and to come with your score and why your score is the way that it is.
Nice.
And then we average these scores, and it's an open discussion. And then we look what has changed from quarter to quarter. And there have been quarters where our relationship score was a 10 and then it dropped to a 6. And it's like, well, what happened in one quarter? How did that happen? And now we're talking about the real thing, and we're, actually talking about how to get that score back up. I think that if you can't have that candid conversation, you could start with an anonymous survey. You could ask everyone to rate 1 to 10, what are we on these things? And then bring your team together and say, okay, we averaged here on this. Let's talk about that. Why do we think? And then maybe in after 3 times, now you're removing the anonymous component and you're talking about. I just think it's so important to create the space to talk about these things, because that's the only way we're going to make it better. We need everyone's participation.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. We have a few questions coming in here. And then I also want to talk about the big transition that your organization went through. First of all, thank you, Jeff. I must admit that I lost my favorite maroon sweater on a plane recently because I'm a forgetful fool. And this is my second favorite. Well, now currently favorite maroon sweater because I lost the other one. But joking aside, we have some great questions that have come in here. This is from Kim. Hi, Kim. Good to see you're here joining us from Wisconsin, I believe. I know that's where you're based. I'm not sure if you're there today. Do you think that the farther up the ladder a leader goes, the farther away from the reality of what is happening on the front line that they become? In other words, as a leader, the more senior do you get, the further away you get from the truth. Is that a fair statement? I have my perspectives. I'd love to hear from you first, Kristen.
I think without intention, that can happen. I think in my journey, right, cleaning business, I started by cleaning houses. So I knew what it was like to be in that role, in that position. And that gave me a lot of empathy and understanding for the team when they were now in that position. And I think there were definitely times as I grew in my career where I became disconnected to that, even though it was a role that I had had before. And I had to be really intentional to connect myself back to that. And sometimes it looked like hosting coffee in the morning before everyone's going to their shift and just like talking about their day and like remembering what it's like for that to be my day to day. And it looks like joining meetings where I'm not really there to, actively participate. I'm there to observe and just be connected to the conversation. And so, yeah, I think without intention, it's very easy to become disconnected. And then I think that's when we're in the place where we're making decisions that maybe aren't really addressing the root of what we're trying to get to.
Yeah, totally.
What do you think?
By the way, everything fine at your front door? Just making sure.
Yes, I have no idea.
Okay, good. That was about 50 minutes ago for anyone who's joined us since the knock, but we're good. That was a first time knock on our lives here.
And he was giving up. Yeah.
So Kim, I think I agree with Kristen's perspective. I think if you look at this from a biological hierarchical perspective, we are a hierarchical species. And so what happens, especially as an organization grows, the more senior you get, especially as an organization becomes larger, a couple of things happen. And I posted about this earlier this week. One, a whisper is a shout and your tiptoes are stomps and everyone is listening and watching, right? Mm-hmm. As leaders, right? It means more if Kristen walks into a room and misbehaves than if someone that she hired last week does. Sorry, by virtue of the position that she holds in her organization as CEO and founder, her behavior bears more weight. The other is the more senior we get in an organization, the further away we can get from the truth. And it's very biological. We're biologically wired to offer our leaders deference. There's no better example of this than I've seen than I think it was Jimmy Fallon. did a special when Robinson Cano, who's a Dominican Republic second baseman, who played for the Yankees, all-star, amazing. He sold out as a free agent and signed with the Seattle Mariners for huge money. The first, and I say sold out very, accusatorily, with accusation. The first time Cano came back to the Bronx to play in Yankee Stadium, Jimmy Fallon thought it would be really funny to go take a life-size cutout of Robinson Cano, this baseball player, find Yankee fans on the streets of New York and say, if Robinson Cano was in front of you right now, what would you say to him? And everyone was, you traitor, you sellout, you piece of, like, just talking smack, right? And then they turn around to face the interviewer, and the real Robinson Cano, flesh and bone, walks out from behind this life-size depiction of him, and he's right there. And everyone turns around, and 10 times out of 10, they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, what a true honor. Like, an amazing, there are even leaders that we despise societally or in our organizations, and you meet them face to face, and we are wired to offer them deference. We often talk a bigger game behind a life-size cutout or behind a screen, which is why we have an issue with online bullying, than it is when we have the human being in front of us. And so, so I think, and I'm writing about this, Kim, in Speak Up Culture, that leaders have to work extra, extra, extra hard to encourage their people to share their truth and reward them when that truth shows up, especially if it's a truth you don't want to hear, right? Bad news never gets better with time. And so, if you're the type of leader who says, don't come to me with the problems, come to me with solutions, good luck with that, right? I'd rather you come to me with problems. And if I know that it's not a problem and you can solve it and it feels like a big deal to you, that's called empowerment. Hey, go figure it out. Ask so-and-so, you can do this, right? If it's a bullet hole below the waterline and it's going to sink the ship, thank you for bringing us to our attention. Let's figure it out. Let's go, right? And don't fire people for bringing you bad news. All of a sudden, bad news will just stop showing up.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, I know I have friends who get really discouraged when they get negative feedback from their people, and I try to remind them, like, this is a good thing. This means that this person feels safe enough to come to you and be honest. And that, like, I think that's a mindset shift of when someone comes to you with really tough feedback. Wow, how special it is that you can have this relationship to talk about that, even if it's hard to hear.
Yeah.
Especially if it's hard.
Yeah. And even, if someone you lead comes to you with an issue and it triggers you, or it's hard for you to be objective, or you're stuck, ask for help. Hire a coach, bring in a facilitator, like bring in an objective third party to say, I care so much about this person on my team. They've given me feedback, which is valid, and I don't know what to do to improve. We need help. Like, that is, like, it is normal and healthy for couples to go for couples counseling or therapy. This is good. Why should it be any different at work? I've seen senior leaders try to do counseling internally with their own stuff. Like, good luck with that. You can't be objective. And by virtue of the fact that you're more senior, your opinion matters more and bears more weight. If you really value the experience of your employers, be willing to make an investment in having people help you work on and solve the issues that are interpersonal.
Totally.
Okay. Dr. Nia Thomas asks, what do you think about self-awareness of the leader? Yes, I'm aware of your bias, and I agree with your bias. So self-awareness, the importance of self-awareness in leadership, and Mike Thorney did a great ad here. Self-awareness stats say 85% of leaders believe they have great self-awareness. By the way, for anyone who says, I'm really self-aware, run far away. Real research says it's less than 20%. I mean, the thing that I love about self-awareness is it's not like an easy bake oven. Like, there's no like, bing, I'm self-aware. Like, it is an infinite pursuit. You will gain in self-awareness on your deathbed, right? So the importance, Kristen, you train leaders, you develop leaders, the importance of self-awareness when it comes to leadership.
Okay, I'm going to go there, but I just have to laugh for a second because did you ever have AOL screen name? Did you ever do that? Like chatting with your friends?
I did.
Mine was Easy Bake Oven.
Yeah.
When you said Easy Bake Oven, I was like, oh, I haven't heard
That's
that.
funny.
Anyways,
We didn't
anyways,
know each other then.
no, we didn't. It was
No.
easy, like easy, the cool way,
Oh,
easy beta.
obviously, duh.
Okay, so self-awareness. So here's my I think that we need the participation of others to be able to understand where our gaps are.
Hmm.
And I think that what's important is that as leaders, we are intentionally asking those questions. I think there's a difference between, do you have any feedback for me? If you ever have feedback for me, come and, please, I always want to hear it. That over, how do you see me getting in my own way? What is one thing that I'm doing? Or what is one thing that I think I might be really good at and it turns out I'm not so great at? Or, what is one thing I could do that would make the biggest positive difference in our working relationship? To me, that kind of question shows that you really want the feedback, and it's intentional because you're essentially saying, here's where I want to grow. And then I think it takes the willingness to receive the feedback, and even if you disagree with it, being willing to try it on, being willing to ask someone else who you trust, do you see this? There have been plenty of times where someone gives me feedback and I'm like, I no, that doesn't apply to me. And then I go talk to two other people and they're like, yes, 100% we do that. And
Nice.
that's like, we need each other.
Yeah.
So what do I think the role is of the leader? To create the space to ask those questions, to not give people the easy way out. Like if someone says, oh no, I don't really have feedback, well, think about it, I'm going to ask you tomorrow. And to me, that shows you really want it. And
Nice.
then responding with thank you, and you've given me so much to think about, and that I think is what helps you become more aware.
Yeah, or
What do you
tell
think?
me more. Like, oftentimes, if someone gives you feedback and either don't understand or don't agree, like, say,
Yeah.
"Can you share more?" Or "Was there a particular time when I did this?" Right? And I love that humility, Kristen, of, like, someone gives you feedback, and I'm like, "I regret to inform you that you're wrong," which, by the way, is gaslighting. But for you to go, "That doesn't apply to me," and then
Yeah.
ask people who know you really well, like a life partner or a close colleague or a best friend, say, "Hey, I got this feedback and I'm having a hard time believing it applies to me. Like, can you prove or disprove?" And sometimes they may be like, "Yeah, that's not you." And you get 2 or 3 data points and it's like, "Oh, turns out it was more about the person delivering than it was about me." And that's okay. It means you need
Yeah.
to navigate that differently. And if that person is continues to be in that mindset and it's like, "Listen, like we're doing this, like I'm really not seeing it. I've sought out a, a ton of different data points. I'm not seeing it. I don't think this is working. Maybe you should work for another leader in this company, or we should find you a better fit."
Yeah. And I think a couple of things there. One, it isn't human to agree on everything all the time. It is okay to disagree on something. And even when
Yes.
we disagree, we can be respectful and compassionate. And one of my favorite books around feedback is Thanks for the Feedback. And I remember this line of, if you disagree with the feedback, responding with something like, thank you so much for having the courage to share your perspective on this. It doesn't match mine. And so I'm really grateful that we're having this conversation because you've given me another side to think about.
Hmm.
And essentially, I just disagreed, right? But I didn't do it in a way that was
Was
disrespectful.
dismissive. Yeah. Yeah.
I think we have to there's also the ability to disagree and support. It doesn't mean that we necessarily have to end the relationship. And there could also be a time when it means we must because it's not working anymore. So yeah, I think the other thing I was going to say is I think it can also go the opposite. We may think that we have a weakness that turns out that's not what others see in us.
Mm.
And we may be harder on ourselves
Oh
than
yeah.
others, and that goes to limiting beliefs and like the narratives we have that might hold us back. And I think sometimes I'm surprised with my lack of self-awareness there. Like there's something that I think I really need to work on. And then I
Mm.
express it. And then the team's like, actually, no, I don't think that's what you need to work on. It's this over here. And like that wasn't even on my radar at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any strength overdone can derail into a weakness, and people often view, "Oh, I'm too compassionate and it gets in the way of my leadership." And people are like, "No, I love you for that."
Right.
So love that. Um, Tina comments, "Another box that can't be checked." Absolutely. There's no
Yeah.
checking self-awareness. And Dr. Nia, just to add in, I mean, both Kristen and I have both taken part in and facilitated in many leadership development programs. In fact, one of Kristen's main activities is doing what's called the Human Leadership Program, which we'll talk about as we end up here. But I think there's no mistake that every single, I want to hear what you think about this, Kristen.
Yeah.
Every single leadership development program that I've seen, heard of, participated in, or facilitated in, they all start with a module on self. Every one of them.
Every
Because
single one.
in order to be an effective leader, we need to learn this instrument first and how to best tune it and work it before we can help another. The work of leadership is helping others tune and work with their own instruments, which is different than ours
Yep.
because we're all snowflakes, we're all different instruments. But we need to work on our own constantly to get better at helping others work on theirs. So that's what I would say around self-awareness.
Yeah, our human leadership program starts with module 1, mindset, understanding what's happening in here,
Yeah,
how that got there, and how that's driving your behavior.
totally. Totally. And my very good friend based out of Pittsburgh, Jason Chotner, says, who knows, many Canadians use ICQ. Not
What was your
AOL.
ICQ screen name?
I think it was Stevie Curls, which is the same as my first email address. You're welcome. Very cool. Okay, can you, Kristen? So we're nearing nearing our descent to landing this plane here today. Such a joy. I've been looking forward to this for so long, and always love speaking with you. And please bring in your comments and questions for Kristen and myself before we end out today. But tell us about, so you, for many years, you had a core business that was a cash cow. It was not an easy line of work, but it made the majority of your revenues. But there was this passion. There was this thing that, we're in this business, but we're really in this business. We're in the business of cleaning, but really we're in the business of helping young people figure out that they have strengths and things to offer, and helping leaders figure out that they can be entrepreneurial. It was really cleaning toilets to help people become better leaders and entrepreneurs and human beings. And you're like, screw the toilets, let's just do the work we want to do. So tell us about that transition, how easy it was, how hard it was, and what we can learn from it.
Yeah. So I think when I started the company, I was 19. And so this was like 15 plus years ago. So I didn't know who I was, what I wanted, and it was not supposed to be my career. It was just a way to make money for the time being.
Mm-hmm.
And I quickly learned, okay, I'm not passionate about scrubbing toilets and vacuuming, and what it was for me is what you said, the developing of leaders, the helping people see, what they're capable of and empowering them to get there. And so over time, we started to do more of that work, not just in our own company, but with other companies. And that looked like facilitating leadership workshops, speaking, hosting leadership development programs. And I always felt like I was so alive in that kind of work. But anytime we were talking about operations in the cleaning business or anything related to cleaning, I would just feel the passion and the life being sucked out of me. And I didn't think that I had any other option. I thought, how as a leader of this company could I even say out loud that this isn't what I'm excited about anymore? And the pandemic happened. Everything came to a pause. Bob Chapman actually and I had a conversation, and he asked me a question: what will you do with this one life you've been given? And it was like such a, wow, Bob. What
a thanks, Grandpa.
On that.
Yeah. Yoda. Speaking with Bob Chapman is like speaking with Yoda. Jeez.
It was like 9 a.m. on a Wednesday. I'm like, hello. But I think what I realized is I don't know. I just know it's not cleaning. So because of our culture, because of our trust, because of our openness, I brought that to the team. I said, I don't know what to do about this. And they're like, well, we don't want to clean either. So
it's a giant elephant in the room. Yeah.
We sold the cleaning side of the business. We transitioned fully into the leadership development space, which was already a company we had. So it's like we just went fully into that company. And it meant that we had to transition our students out of the company. It meant that we had to find, the best, most compassionate way to help them with their next steps. And what I think was really cool about that is everyone worked together, even though it meant for some that this was the end of their journey in our company.
Yeah.
So I think
for
just
now.
What we can learn from that is, every single person is a human being. And I think sometimes we just maybe believe that not everyone is struggling like we are, or not everyone, wants something more like we do, or, and if we never have the courage to speak it out loud, how do we ever know and do anything about it? And in my case, I really needed my team to lead me. And I think the point is we need each other, and we need to work together to keep that that passion alive. And we can pivot, we can change, whether it looks like a big change like what we did, or a change in your role, or even if it means leaving the organization you're with for something that you're more excited about. I think it would be so powerful if we could not keep that inside. And I wish, if I have a regret, it's that I waited so long to talk about it.
Neat.
Yep.
So even, you inevitably did what seems like the right thing and the right call, and there was opportunity cost. There was wasted time because you knew this was clear for for a long time.
Yes. And also, I struggled with my identity as a servant leader. How could a servant leader decide this? And what I realized is I was actually doing my team a disservice because I wasn't at my best, and I wasn't creating the kind of culture that I really wanted to create because I was not happy. And, there's only so long we can operate in that state when it's hurting us, and therefore the people that are in our span of care.
Amazing. Thank you. So one of the things you do now, which Alejandro from my team and his partner as well took part in, is the Human Leadership Program.
Yep.
Can you share more about that, and how, I think you said there's an offer you want to give to our listeners and audience as well?
Yeah. So we host the Human Leadership Program 4 to 5 times a year. We usually have about 500 leaders from all over the world. And it's 2 days. It's virtual. And we talk about 6 key components of leadership. So we dive into mindset. We talk about relationships. We talk about communication, growth, self-care, inspiration. And I think it's a place to tap into this different kind of leadership that we're talking about, that we believe is, missing, and that I think is really needed to get us to a better world at work. And we'd love to give everyone who's listening a free ticket. So if you would like to take us up on that, if you want to bring someone from your organization to join you, we would love that. We can give you the dates that we have for next year and sign you up for one. You can just go to my website, KristenHadeed.com, and there is a page that says contact, and you can just write in, say that we met here and that you would love to take us up on the tickets for the program.
Amazing. And I know Ale from my team is in the comment and chat, and anyone else, if you hear a book or a resource or something shared, feel free to copy it into chat. So KristenHadeed.com, go to the contact, say, I want the free goodness, and make it happen. Amazing. Quick comment here. Hello, Barry. Barry, based out of St. Louis, the very first person who gave me a chance to do a Speak Up Culture talk at the St. Louis Human Resources Management Conference. Barry, the book will be out in just under a year. I'm putting the finishing touches on the manuscript now. The book will be out October 3rd, 2023 is the current schedule. Don't tell your friends yet because it's not official, but working on it. And I think pre-sales will start late spring, May, June. This is Kristen's book, Permission to Screw Up. Highly recommend. And Kristen is working on her next book now as well. I'm sure we'll learn about that when Kristen is ready to share more about that. Kristen, anything else that we've yet to speak about, or you wanted to speak about that we haven't yet?
I think the only thing that I'm thinking about is, I think the reason we have the relationship that we do and the trust that we do is because of feedback, and because of this whole speak up idea. There was a time in our relationship over 10 years ago where I owned doing something that I did not do very well, and did not do my end of the deal. And you gave me really tough feedback about that. That was really important for me to hear. And I will never forget that conversation and your courage in starting that conversation. And also, I think that is what started the foundation of our friendship. And I just want to encourage people that I think that's what it takes to have a real relationship with someone, whether it's someone you work with or friend or whatever. And yeah, I'm so grateful for our connection.
Yeah. I think both you and I are the first people to admit that we aren't perfect. Again, you wrote a freaking book on it. And yet, we write about this stuff because we want to live what's in the pages, and we don't get it right all the time. But I think the fact that you gave me permission to be imperfect. I remember literally I was sitting in your office at your desk. There's a little There's a
Oh,
computer
no.
screen with a quote
Oh,
on the difference between a boss and a micromanager and a leader. And, you wrapped up the workshop, and I was sitting with one of our colleagues, a
oh,
shared friend by the name of Ashley. And I was like, Bill, I'm like, do I say it? Do I say the thing? I think I have to say the thing. And I'm like, and I was so nervous to give you that feedback, and it ended up being one of the best conversations of my professional career, and made our relationship closer, our friendship closer, our both of our just beings as human beings and people who are attempting to lead and do right by others. It made us stronger and better, and it was because you were living the message of the book that you had yet to think of up and write. And hopefully I was living the thing that 10 years later I was putting pen to paper on as well. So it is such a joy always to be in your presence. And I think so much of what we spoke about here, and feedback, and the ability to disagree well, which is a telltale sign of psychological safety. These are the conversations that we need to be having at our dinner tables, at our family gatherings, at our company meetings, and in society at large. That we don't need to agree, and yet we can still respect and seek to understand. And I think if more of us have the courage to do that, we will make the type of progress that we really need in our human experience of this earth.
no doubt. I love it.
I
Give
love
you
it.
a
I
hug.
love you. It is such a treat to spend time with you. Please follow Kristen. She has an amazing blog. Go to KristenHadeed.com. Write in if you want to take part and spend time with her and her team with the Human Leadership Program. Kristen, thank you. Stay safe. Enjoy time with your team. And as always, I look forward to speaking next time. Thanks all for joining us and listening to our ramblings. Hope it made you better. Thanks all.